Have you ever read something so profound, so earth-shattering, that it completely rearranged your understanding of the world? For me, that moment came from a place I least expected it, a single, short verse in the Bible. It wasn't a complex theological argument or a dramatic story of fire and brimstone. It was just a few words tucked away in the book of Psalms, but they were enough to make me question everything I thought I knew about God. Growing up, my understanding of God was pretty straightforward. There was one God, the creator of the universe, the all-powerful, all-knowing being we called God, or sometimes Yahweh. This concept of monotheism was the bedrock of my faith, the unshakable foundation upon which everything else was built. The idea of one God was simple, elegant, and absolute. It was the first and most important rule. Then one day, I was reading through the Psalms, and I landed on Psalm 82, verse 1. I'll read it to you exactly as it appears in many English translations. God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. I read it once. Then I read it again. He renders judgment among the gods? Plural? My mind snagged on that single letter S. It felt like a typo, a mistake. How could there be other gods? I had always been taught that any other gods were false idols, man-made statues of wood and stone, not actual divine beings. The verse didn't say idols or false gods. It just said gods. And what's more, God was presiding over them in a great assembly. This implied a council, a meeting of divine beings. This wasn't a minor detail. It was a crack in the foundation of my entire belief system. If there were other gods, who were they? Where did they come from? Did they have power? My simple, neat picture of the cosmos suddenly became incredibly complex and, frankly, a little chaotic. I couldn't just brush it aside. The verse was right there, in black and white, in the holy book I held so dear. It demanded an explanation. This sent me down a rabbit hole of research that I never anticipated. I started looking into the original Hebrew text, and that's when things got even more fascinating and a lot more complicated. The English translation, while trying its best, was smoothing over a much more intricate picture. In the original Hebrew, Psalm 82 verse 1 reads, Elohim nitzav benat el, bikarev Elohim yishpat. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The word we translate as God in the first part of the verse is Elohim. And the word we translate as gods in the second part is also Elohim. Wait, what? The same word was being used for both? My mind was blown. A more literal translation would be something like, Elohim stands in the divine council. In the midst of the Elohim, he judges. So who or what is Elohim? This one word turned out to be the key to everything. I learned that Elohim is a plural noun in Hebrew. Think of words like sheep or fish in English. They can be singular or plural depending on the context. In the Hebrew Bible, Elohim is used in thousands of places. Most of the time, when it refers to the one God of Israel, it's paired with a singular verb, which is how we know it's meant to be singular. For example, in Genesis 1 verse 1, in the beginning, Elohim, with a singular verb, created the heavens and the earth. But here in Psalm 82, the context is different. It describes a scene, one Elohim standing to judge a group of other Elohim. This verse wasn't just a linguistic quirk. It was painting a picture of a heavenly courtroom, a divine council where the supreme God, Yahweh, who is also called Elohim, is calling other divine beings, also called Elohim, to account for their actions. This was a paradigm shift for me. The Bible wasn't necessarily describing a universe with only one single divine entity. Instead, it was describing a universe with one supreme divine entity who presides over a host of other lesser divine beings. These weren't rival gods on equal footing with Yahweh. They were subordinate. Think of a king and his court of nobles, or a CEO and the board of directors. There is one ultimate authority, but other powerful beings exist within that structure. As I dug deeper, I found that this concept wasn't isolated to just Psalm 82. It pops up in other places. In Deuteronomy 32, there's a passage that talks about the Most High dividing up the nations among the sons of God. Job chapters 1 and 2 describe the sons of God, presenting themselves before the Lord in the heavenly court, with Satan among them. These sons of God, in Hebrew B'nai Elohim, were part of this divine council. Suddenly, passages that had seemed a bit strange or allegorical before now snapped into focus with a new, more literal meaning. The spiritual world described in the Bible was far more populated and complex than the simple monotheistic model I had been taught. It was a hierarchy. There was a divine family, a heavenly host, a council. Now, what does this mean for the idea of monotheism? Did this verse destroy it? Not exactly. It redefined it. The ultimate conclusion I came to is that the Bible promotes what scholars call monolatry, or henotheism, in its earliest stages, which eventually develops into the robust monotheism we see later. Monolatry is the worship of one God without denying the existence of other, lesser divine beings. The first commandment isn't, "There are no other gods." It's, "You shall have no other gods before me." The command presupposes their existence, but forbids their worship, demanding exclusive loyalty to Yahweh, the Supreme One. This realization didn't destroy my faith. In a strange way, it deepened it. It made the biblical world feel more real, more ancient, and more connected to the cultures that surrounded ancient Israel. The Israelites weren't living in a vacuum. They were part of a world that believed in a populated spiritual realm. But their revelation was unique. Their God, Yahweh, was the king of that realm, the ultimate judge, the one worthy of all worship. It also made me realize how much can be lost in translation. We read our modern, Western understanding of monotheism back into the text, and we smooth over the bumps and complexities that are right there on the page. We see the word God and assume we know exactly what it means, but the original authors had a much more layered and nuanced view of the divine. This journey, all sparked by one verse, taught me a powerful lesson. It taught me to read more carefully, to ask hard questions, and not to be afraid of what I might find. Sometimes, questioning the things you hold most dear isn't an act of rebellion, but an invitation to a deeper, richer, and more honest understanding. The foundation of my faith didn't crumble. It settled onto a much older and more solid piece of ground. The world of the Bible became more vibrant, more complex, and infinitely more fascinating. It shows that faith isn't about having all the answers locked down in a neat little box. It's about the journey of seeking, questioning, and discovering. And sometimes, the most profound discoveries are waiting in a single line of text you've read a dozen times before, just waiting for you to truly see it for the first time. Thank you so much for joining me on this little theological journey. If this sparked any thoughts or questions for you, I would absolutely love to hear about them in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring these kinds of deep questions, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more. It really helps, and I'd be grateful to have you as part of our community. Until next time, keep asking questions.